ask you a question. Do you think you should be the one to be able to decide when to pull the trigger?
No, sir.
Isn't that what this is about? If you adopt the position that any time you are denied, your particular, and there's 4 groups out there, and inspectors, you're the group you headed, anytime you are denied, that ipso facto requires the United States and the Security Council to act on what they said they would do, which is to use whatever means necessary to take on Saddam Hussein so you can get into that particular facility. Is that not correct? Is that not your position?
Mr. Senator, I have a job to do, or I had a job to do, and that was to disarm Iraq in accordance with the provisions of relevant resolutions.
With all due respect, I'm not trying to be confrontational. I'm trying to get this as clear as I can. I really mean this now. You have an absolute logic. You put together a very tight syllogism here. You have indicated that your job is to disarm. The only way you can disarm is to have access. The only way you can have access is either with permission on the part of Iraq, or if denied, forced access, right?
Compelled access.
Compelled.
Yes.
Well, okay, compelled. You sound like the lawyer and I sound like the military guy. I mean, compelled, where I come from, when my old man said you're compelled, it meant I was forced. I mean, it was a real simple proposition. It wasn't much to debate. Now, there is a clear logic to that. And that's what I mean when I say I respect your position. But that means that whenever you choose a target that warrants inspection and you are denied, that ipso facto, at that moment, the only way your position can be satisfied or sustained is if the UN Security Council or the United States, acting unilaterally, uses force to guarantee access. Is not that true?
Yes, sir.
Now, that means that you get to choose the time and place when we would use force, if we use force.
No, sir.
Of course you do. If you choose the site and it's denied.
And we coordinate with the member states to include the United States.
Exactly.
And prior to us going in, we have their agreement that this indeed is an inspection worth doing.
Okay, inspection worth doing, everybody's agreed it's worth doing, and it gets stopped.
Yes, sir.
At that moment, we're an automatic pilot as far as you're concerned. Period. No ifs, ands, or buts. Now, I respect that. But now, it seems to me the Secretary of State might have a slightly different problem. Secretary of State might be sitting there and saying, now look over there on that side. Now, I remember so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so, and the 12 people on this side, they're all the ones that said they didn't want to use force. Now, I'm going to have to go tell the president now that we should, or Secretary Cohen, unleash whatever it takes to get it done. And our military assessment is the same as the majors. The majors' assessment is, privately held but publicly acknowledged later, that airstrikes alone aren't going to do this. Saddam's not going to cave on this. So, now here's the deal. I recommended the president have at it and let the chips fall where they may. A reasonable position for the Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of State to take. But I respectfully suggest, Major, I respectfully suggest they have a responsibility slightly above your pay grade. Slightly above your pay grade. To decide whether or not to take the nation to war alone, or to take the nation to war partway, or to take the nation to war halfway. That's a real tough decision. That's why they get paid the big bucks. That's why they get the limos and you don't. I mean this sincerely. I'm not trying to be flip, because I think, and that's why I said at the outset, the reason why I'm glad you did what you did, we should come to our milk. We should make a decision. But in terms of whether the Secretary of State has no more to consider than you do as the arms inspector, you didn't get in, didn't get my job done, get me in. Period. You made the deal, right? That's the deal. A deal's a deal. Get me in. Scott Ritter, I'm ready to go. It's not how it works. Now, maybe it should work that way. But wouldn't you acknowledge that if you were President of the United States or the Secretary of State, you'd sit there and say, now, okay, old Scotty boy didn't get in. We said he should get in. We want him to get in. It's important that he does get in. They're not going to let them in, so what are we going to do now? We know that France and Russia aren't going to be with us. We're quite confident China's not. We've already run those traps. They're not there. We're not sure where the United States Senate is, but have at it, boys. Go get them. And by the way, Scott and the boys say air power's not enough. I think it's a legitimate debate, Scott, Major. I think it's a legitimate debate. But I don't think we should be putting it in the context of, you have somebody up there at state saying, look, how can we weasel out of this agreement? We want to let this guy out there hanging. We're not this. It's a very practical political decision. Same kind of decision General Powell made. Same kind of decision President Bush made. Every president, every Secretary of State has to do it. Like I said, they get paid more than you. Their job's a hell of a lot more complicated than yours. They may have made the wrong decision, and you brought it to light. We should address it. We should say straight up where we are, and we should do it. And for that, I thank you. But it's above your pay grade.
Rationality belongs to the cool observers, but because of the stupidity of the average man, he follows not reason but faith, and the naive faith of the proletarian requires necessary illusion and emotionally potent oversimplifications, which have to be provided by myth makers to keep the ordinary person on the right course.
That I'm allowed to ask you this question is because today the federal court ruled that the government doesn't have the right to determine who is or is not a journalist. This is the second election in a row that the court had to overturn your government. Do you still insist on being able to make that decision, and why?
First of all, questions around accreditation were handled by the press gallery and the consortium of networks who have strong perspectives on quality journalism and the important information that is shared with Canadians. The reality is organizations like yours that continue to spread misinformation and disinformation on the science around vaccines, around how we're going to actually get through this pandemic and be there for each other and keep our kids safe, is part of why we're seeing such unfortunate anger and lack of understanding of basic science. And quite frankly, I won't call it a media organization, your group of individuals need to take accountability for some of the polarization that we're seeing in this country. And I think Canadians are cluing into the fact that there is a really important decision we take about the kind of country we want to see. And I salute all extraordinary, hardworking journalists that put science and facts at the heart of what they do and ask me tough questions every day, but make sure that they are educating and informing Canadians from a broad range of perspectives, which is the last thing that you guys do.
Killed a million people in Iraq.
That is a separate...
You killed 1 million people in Iraq. It's incredible that you have the brass neck to be sitting here now urging another Iraq war.
George,
after
if
what
I was
you've
still
already
in
done.
Parliament...
There can be no doubt that Saddam Hussein has biological weapons and the capability to rapidly produce more, many more. And he has the ability to dispense these lethal poisons and diseases in ways that can cause massive death and destruction. If biological weapons seem too terrible to contemplate, chemical weapons are equally chilling. UNMOVIC already laid out much of this, and it is documented for all of us to read in UNSCOM's 1999 report on the subject. If we consider just one category of missing weaponry, 6,500 bombs from the Iran-Iraq war, UNMOVIC says the amount of chemical agent in them would be in the order of 1,000 tons. These quantities of chemical weapons are now unaccounted for. Dr. Blick says, quipped that, quote, mustard gas is not marmalade. You are supposed to know what you did with it. We believe Saddam Hussein knows what he did with it, and he has not come clean with the international community. We have evidence these weapons existed. What we don't have is evidence from Iraq that they have been destroyed or where they are. That is what we are still waiting for.
Dr. Fauci, knowing that it is a crime to lie to Congress, do you wish to retract your statement of May 11th where you claimed that the NIH never funded gain-of-function research in Wuhan?
Senator Paul, I have never lied before the Congress, and I do not retract that statement. This paper that you are referring to was judged by qualified staff up and down the chain as not being gain of function. Let me finish.
You take an animal virus and you increase its transmissibility to humans,
right.
You're saying that's not gain of function?
Yeah, that is correct. And Senator Paul, you do not know what you are talking about, quite frankly. And I want to say that officially. You do not know what you are talking about. Okay, you get one person.
Let's read from the NIH definition of gain of function. This is your definition that you guys wrote. It says that scientific research that increases the transmissibility among mammals is gain of function. They took animal viruses that only occur in animals and they increased their transmissibility to humans. How you can say that is not gain of function?
It is not.
It's a dance, and you're dancing around this because you're trying to obscure responsibility for 4 million people dying around the world from a pandemic.
And let's Dr. Fauci.
I have to, well, now you're getting into something. If the point that you are making is that the grant that was funded as a sub-award from EcoHealth to Wuhan created SARS-CoV-2. That's where you are getting. Let me finish.
We don't know.
Well, wait a minute.
It didn't come from the lab, but all the evidence is pointing that it came from the lab, and there will be responsibility for those who funded the lab, including yourself.
I totally
This committee will allow the witness to respond.
I totally resent the lie that you are now propagating, Senator, because if you look at the viruses that were used in the experiments, that were given in the annual reports, that were published in the literature, it is molecularly impossible.
No one's saying those viruses caused it.
It
No
is
one is
molecularly.
those viruses caused the pandemic. What we're alleging is that gain-of-function research was going on in that lab, and NIH funded it.
That is
you can't
not.
get away from it. It meets your definition, and you are obfuscating the truth.
I'm not obfuscating the truth.
Senator
You are the
Paul's
one.
time is expired, but I will allow the witness to.
Let me just finish. I want everyone to understand that if you look at those viruses, and that's judged by qualified virologists and evolutionary biologists, those viruses are molecularly impossible
No one's
to
saying
result
they are. No
in
one's saying those viruses
SARS-CoV-2.
caused the pandemic.
Senator Paul,
We're saying they are gain-of-function viruses because they were
They're not.
animal viruses that became more transmissible and human, and you funded it. And you admit the truth. And you implying...
Paul, your time has expired, and I will allow witnesses who come before this committee to respond.
And you are implying that what we did was responsible for the deaths of individuals. I totally resent that. And if anybody is lying here, Senator, it is you.
Whatever our hopes may be for the future, for reducing this threat or living with it, there is no escaping either the gravity or the totality of its challenge to our survival and to our security. A challenge that confronts us in unaccustomed ways in every sphere of human activity. This deadly challenge imposes upon our society two requirements of direct concern, both to the press and to the President. Two requirements that may seem almost contradictory in tone, but which must be reconciled and fulfilled if we are to meet this national peril. I refer first to the need for far greater public information, and second, to the need for far greater official secrecy. The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it. Even today, there is little value in opposing the threat of a closed society by imitating its arbitrary restrictions. Even today, there is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it. And there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. That I do not intend to permit to the extent that it's in my control. And no official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know.
Oh boy, welcome into Redacted on this Monday. Hope everyone is doing well. Welcome to the rebellion. Hello to all the rebels joining us. We've got tens of thousands of you joining us from around the world. Let us know where you're joining us from tonight on our live stream. Yes, we're live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern time. And we have viewers from Australia, from Iceland, South Korea, United States, all over the place. So good to see all of you. Covering the big stories that we're going to be covering here on the show tonight. We're going to be looking at the Ukraine war. There's maybe about 5 or 6 huge stories out of Ukraine this afternoon. We're going to look at the NATO piece of this, which of course is wanting to put boots on the ground drumbeats getting louder to have physical force, NATO force actually on the ground, even though many of them already are, but actually declaring full-on war with Russia. Putin firing back on his side, making a declaration of one of the sternest warnings yet that we've seen from the Russian side. We also have news and reports of chemical weapons being used in Donbass today. We'll get to that. There's a lot to unpack in Ukraine this afternoon. It's just getting crazier and crazier. I mean, I saw people saying earlier, like, drama. Oh yeah, it's drama, because now
that's crazy.
They're like too proud. They're like too proud to stop right now. You know.
Well, I was gonna say that's kind of crazy considering Putin's dead, right? I mean, wasn't that?
Didn't he die? Because Zelensky said a few weeks ago, he's like, I don't want to talk peace with that guy because I don't even think he's alive anymore. So he is alive, and the West actively torpedoed peace talks. We have more evidence of that. So there's a lot to unpack there. We'll get to all of that. We're also going to look at the coming invasion of Haiti. Is that inching closer? Canada making a declaration over the past 24 hours and launching spy actual airships into Haiti airspace. We've got the very latest on that. There's a lot of moving pieces on Haiti that we're going to cover because it's very weird, the timing of this. And, you know, it's amazing to watch how these warmongers and how the deep state actually works. You can actually see it happening in Haiti in real time. What they want to make sure that this country collapses, that we have total control over this country, that they don't get to live on their own without Western interference. And you can see how the game plan, the pieces on the chessboard play out right in front of us. And we'll show you those pieces. Kind of crazy. Also, we're going to look at Portugal, because as all of these NATO countries are starting to send tanks to Ukraine, why is Portugal, former neutral country, famously stayed out of World War II, why are they doing this? Announcement this weekend from Portugal that we're going to unpack, and I'm going to say some things that are, I don't know, I'm just not happy about it. I think it's ridiculous. Oh, and we also had some breaking news just a short time ago on FTX. Democrats are running scared on what FTX is asking for. Oh, they want their money back. Oh boy, this is going to get interesting. They have about 22 days to act, or we're going to start naming some names. Who received that dirty money from FTX? Interesting. And we're going to talk balloons. We got to talk about this balloon because there's a bunch of moving pieces on this afternoon. The craziness on this balloon story, it's all a distraction, and I'll give you my theory on all of it. All of that and more as Redacted starts right now. Wilson, Portugal, in our chat says Portugal doesn't want to be left out of the big room. The big room. Vote for frango asado for president. Chicken. Yes. Delicious chicken in Portugal. I will say that's one of my favorites. Natalie is not here. She is boarding a plane right now, joining us tomorrow back here on the show after her West Coast trip to the States. So she'll be back here in studio tomorrow. It'll be great to have her back here, thankfully. You've had an all-boys crew for the past couple of days. I hope we've done you well. I don't know.
I feel like we have. I mean, personally.
Yeah. I think the men can handle. I think we can handle ourselves, right?
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Of course we can.
It's amazing when women leave the house for a while. It's like you slip back into just slovenly, you know. You're like, oh, I pick up my clothes again. It's like we slip back into some old caveman behaviors. It's kind of crazy.
I'm not gonna get dressed today.
Yeah, what dressed pants? I gotta put on pants today.
I mean, anyway, I'm single. You're just describing every day to me.
Every day.
I'm not wearing pants right now. So.
Oh man, then what are you pressing the buttons with? I don't want to know.
You don't want to know.
So we have a daily newsletter that hasn't stopped. Natalie continues to write the newsletter. We've had a couple of thousand of you sign up overnight for the newsletter. It's our redacted newsletter. Goes out first thing in the morning, East Coast time, about 6:30 a.m. Eastern time, over your cup of coffee. You can read it. We try to provide some value for you, bringing you up to date on some of the big stories of the day, like 5 or 6 of the big stories of the day, plus a little stuff you might have missed. So when you go to redacted.inc, not .com, it's redacted.inc, put in your email address. You'll receive a welcome email from me. My email is just clayton@redacted.inc. And you have to verify your email. That way we don't get hung up in spam filters and all that other stuff. And then tomorrow morning, for tomorrow's Tuesday newsletter, you'll get it first thing in the morning. So check that out. Again, you can read it in about 5 or 10 minutes.
Hey, before you get started, Wizwhackers in the chat over on Rumble would like to know if you could just speak a little bit faster. I guess you're just speaking a little bit too slow. So,
Wizwhacker, he wants me to speak more quickly today?
Yeah.
Okay, let's speak a little bit more quickly.
More quickly.
How about I'll get through the news like this. Is that okay? Would you like me to speak that quickly? My brain can't even work that fast. It's like the Micro Machine guy from the 1980s commercials, right?
Yep. A weird thing that happens with me, because I edit almost everything in double time. And so, like, if I'm doing a lot of editing and then I go to watch the live show, everything seems like it's in such slow motion. I'll almost get anxiety sometimes, like when the live show starts, because everything's just in real time. I watch YouTube videos in double time. So it's like everything I watch is in double speed.
Yeah.
And so this show is the only thing in my life that's the actual proper speed, and it's weird to me.
That is weird. I know. I listen to like audiobooks on double speed. That's because my brain, I can consume it that way. I hear it. I can just consume it pretty quickly that way. People are in the chat mentioning, yes, of course, an awful, awful earthquake in Turkey and Syria, and our hearts go out to those people. I just saw some just awful, awful images. We're not going to go in depth from it tonight. It's more of a broader based news story, but it is awful. And, it does bring up a good question, though, about sanctions. Like, think about Syria being one of the most heavily sanctioned countries in the world because of a Western proxy in that country that we created, right? So you have all of these people with no energy to begin with, very little food to speak of. We've destroyed that country. Hey, now in this massive earthquake might be a time to remove some of these sanctions so people can get the help that they need. There's an idea.
Yeah, medicines. I mean, people don't realize that, like, they block from getting like insulin, just basic medical needs in some cases.
It's just awful. And it's just amazing to see some of the responses too. I saw just awful images of children, who lost their lives in this, in the rubble, and seeing, it was just awful. I shouldn't even say it. No, I'm not going to say it. It's just too awful to even speak of. But the response from certain people in one particular country that we're going to talk about just now, and sharing these images of these Turkish children who were killed and just gloating about it. Just awful. Awful human beings. So let's start there. Let's start in that country. Let's start in Ukraine, where you have a lot of moving pieces to talk about tonight. Things are getting really bad in Ukraine. NATO and Western countries do not want peace in that country. There are a lot of innocent people in Ukraine, people that won't have nothing to do with war. And, again, you have NATO and Western leaders actively continuing to push, openly talking now about soldiers, boots on the ground. And they've, the West has been, of course, caught torpedoing peace talks that Putin and Zelensky were close to finalizing. We'll have more on that part of the story in just a moment. We also have breaking news and reports of chemical weapons being used by Ukrainians against Russian forces in the Donbass. We also have new reports of planned false flag attacks in Ukraine. In fact, Western media are already reportedly showing up in this town where these false flag attacks are set to happen. It's amazing. It's like the media got a phone call, like Associated Press and the BBC, like, hey, you might want to go to this town because there might be something that's about to happen there, and we're going to definitely need you to report on it. Just like you did in other false flag attacks over the past couple of months. It's amazing.
So get your pretend flak jackets and helmets ready.
Right. We know the hotel where they're staying at. Isn't that amazing? Like, they've flown in ahead of this to be there. So that's how this all works. Like, they're prepped. And then they can immediately run and print these fake stories. And we have hidden videos showing Ukrainian troops tonight admitting that virtually all of their forces have been eliminated. We're going to show you that bombshell video in just a moment. But somehow I don't think you're going to see any of these stories tonight on corporate media. Like if you flip on Lester Holt on NBC, I don't think you're going to see the stories that we're about to cover here on corporate media. So let's start with a story you're definitely not going to see on CNN, which is chemical weapons. This report comes to us from Denis Pushilin, the acting governor of Donetsk, the Donetsk People's Republic, which is now Russia. They voted overwhelmingly to become part of Russia. He's the acting governor in the Donbass. And let's be clear, if this charge was being leveled at Russians, it would be all over the nightly news. Putin using chemical weapons, You would hear it everywhere. But you won't hear this story. It would be covered wall to wall on television and radio and every major newspaper. Because remember those 46 Ukrainian bioweapons labs that the Biden administration finally admitted to? They were lying about it, told us they didn't exist. And then, oh, by the way, yes, they do exist. So just put a pin in that for a moment. Might come back. So here is the story. Ukraine accused of chemical warfare. Toxic compounds have reportedly been used against Russian troops in Donbass. Russian military commanders have reported that Ukrainian troops deployed a type of chemical weapon against their units in Donbass, according to a local official. Speaking to Russian television on Monday, Denis Pushilin, the acting governor of the Donetsk People's Republic, said his office has been receiving reports about possible chemical warfare for at least 2 weeks. Ukrainian troops have reportedly been deploying chemical compounds that make our military service members ill, he said.
Really quickly, did we cover or show the videos recently where, remember when they had packed refrigerators and they had the chemicals in there? I thought we played a video or something like that on this channel, but I can't remember if yeah. So they had these chemical things that they were making and putting in the refrigerators to store.
Yes.
So it checks out.
Yes, it does. So when you think back to those 46 bioweapons labs, when they're just bio-research facilities, according to Victoria Nuland. Okay. And who knows, maybe these came out of there or not, we don't know. We know very little about it. And so, by the way, we should be fair and transparent here. So, by the way, does Dmitry Peskov in the Ministry of Defense for Russia. The spokesperson for the Kremlin this afternoon declining to discuss any of this with journalists or the press. So Russia's not running out there, at least from the Kremlin point of view. The governor is in Donetsk, but the Kremlin is saying, we're not going to talk to journalists about that, that we don't have any accurate information about the issue yet. So we're not talking about it. But if they did, I mean, think about if the shoe were on the other foot, they'd be running around all over the place shouting about it, but they're not. So hat tip to them for just keeping their mouth shut on this. We don't know. But that's the report this afternoon. It's from the acting governor that this is what's happening. So Pushkin says, Peskov says, the Russian military would pass such incidents up the chain of command and suggest contacting the defense ministry with further inquiries. The defense ministry didn't have any immediately comment on the claim. Speculation that some Ukrainian units may use airdropped munitions with a chemical agent has been swirling on social media for the past couple of weeks, since mid-January, actually. The rumors were apparently triggered by a video that surfaced people showing people in Ukrainian military uniforms assembling around a small quad of drones carrying small containers, with a payload apparently taken from a refrigerator that we showed here on the show. Some military people are saying that whatever was used must have been volatile if it had to be stored at very low temperatures. So we'll be watching this story and see how it develops. We'll wait till we hear more from the Russian side and the Kremlin on this, and we'll see if there's any response from chemical from the other side. Of course, chemical warfare is illegal, so it'll be interesting to hear what the Western side says about this and what Ukraine says about this. We'll see if we can get any answers from them. But that's the report on chemical weapons. Meanwhile, this is a desperate move right now by desperate alliance, which is NATO. And NATO is getting very, very desperate. Now, NATO is actively talking about putting boots on the ground in Ukraine. So you might be sitting, have they lost their minds? And the answer is yes, they have lost their minds. NATO members I think they're just too proud right now. Like they've crossed the Rubicon. Are they going to be able to just go back with their tail between their legs once this all unfolds over the next few weeks? I don't think so. I think they've got too much at stake now. They've put too much out there. Their pride would be hurt. Could you imagine like Secretary Austin, Jen Stoltenberg, all of these guys just being like, all right, we're going home. You showed us. No, they're too proud. Boris Johnson, all these guys, all these clowns, all these warmongers. NATO members over the past few days have started beating the drum that Ukraine is collapsing. So they're saying it. They know what's coming. They know that Ukraine is done. Let's put Western NATO forces on the battlefield. Now, let's put boots on the ground. Here is former British defense minister on the urgent need. And see what they're doing is they love to bring out people who were part of the deep state and they put them out on television. They feed them information. This is how it works. The intelligence state feeds them information, and then they go on national television and they float these ideas. Same thing with David Petraeus. Same thing with all of these guys. This is how it works. And we know that because we've heard directly from members of the deep state who've told us exactly how it works. So here is the former defense minister of the UK talking about boots on the ground. Watch.
Yes, I do. I feel that certainly if you were to put a NATO force in there, that would be NATO versus Russia. But Russia is the guilty party here. Russia has invaded another sovereign state. And we have declared, everybody in the West has declared that Ukraine has got to win, and we're doing a tremendous amount. Britain led the way under Boris Johnson in leading the support for Ukraine. And the West has got to decide that if it is going to support Ukraine, and Ukraine does have to win, because if Ukraine does not win, where will Putin go next? We have to decide exactly how we're going to do this. And I think just edging slowly, a bit more here, a bit more there, is not the answer.
So you got to go all the way. You got to get forces in there. We got to get those jets, and we got to put human beings to fight in these trenches against Putin's army. Smart move. Hey, will you send your son or daughter? In the U.S., former CIA Director David Petraeus says that boots on the ground is one option for the next stage of this conflict, but he's also beating the drum for regime change in Russia. Again, handed information from the deep state. Remember, he had his security clearance revoked a number of years ago after he was basically giving secrets to his pillow talk lady. But nevertheless, over the past couple of months, he's been trotted out by the deep state to go on CNN, to go on MSNBC, to do these television interviews with the Washington Post and others, and push regime change in Russia. He admits the CIA, this is amazing, he admits the CIA is already preparing a coup in Russia, and he'd like to see that unfold. That's an option for him, a coup in Russia, regime change. Watch.
The other alternative, of course, is regime change. And that is so hard to calculate. And he has such a grip on power. But also, as you know from history, what is inconceivable all of a sudden can become inevitable, sometimes overnight. And looking for those kind of indicators is something that an organization near and dear to both our hearts is looking for, I'm sure, very, very assiduous.
Yeah, the CIA, an organization near and dear to both of our hearts. Like when I go to bed, when I like curling up in bed and I'm thinking about what's near and dear to my heart, the CIA is the first thing I think of. And then I reach over and kiss my wife goodnight.
It's like the Jack Nicholson in A Few Good Men. We're like, we want them on that wall. We need them on that wall. They're there to protect us. They wake up every day with people 50 feet away that want to kill them.
Like, do you feel safer?
So we support them.
Do you feel do you feel safer that we go into Nicaragua and sow discontent and destabilize the country so much so that millions of Nicaraguans then pour across the border in southern United States? Or do you feel safer that we go into Sudan or Syria or Yemen or Somalia or Haiti and destabilize those countries so that they want to hurt us? Do you feel safer? I don't.
Yeah, well, I've talked about Anwar al-Awlaki, who was over, in those areas trying to tell children, just because they say every time an innocent person dies, so 90% plus of people who die in drone strikes are innocent, right? Mm-hmm. So out of those innocent people, their family members want to raise up arms against the U.S. Why wouldn't they? And Anwar al-Awlaki was over there saying, look, we can't let the military, make you not like American people, because American people are not doing this. But like, think about it. For every one of their innocent people that die, you're going to have people that hate the United States, and that's growing more and more and more. So why, like, we're creating basically what we are. We are the terrorists, but we're creating more by killing innocent people.
Yeah, and then they, of course, they see their father die, and they raised with that hatred in their heart for a country that, we know the stories. But so, boots on the ground, regime change. That's what David Petraeus wants. Did I say Petraeus? I meant to say Petraeus.
That's perfect.
My apologies. I must have Freudian slip there. I love this tweet in response to Petraeus. Very arrogant and presumptuous for him to come straight out and say it. Coup d'etat is our normal business. Is it why there is a conflict in Ukraine now? Putin is not Gaddafi or Saddam Hussein. This is a different and very dangerous level of game. Yeah. But they don't see it that way. Did you hear what David said, what Petraeus said? He said sometimes the impossible becomes inevitable, right? The idea that we would actually be going to war with Russia, that seems impossible. But it's inevitable when you provoke them, starting in 2014, with sniper attacks to kill people and foment,
I would argue,
a disaster in the Maidan coup, right?
I would argue even right after World War II, when we set up bases to basically and started NATO in response to the Soviet Union. So, like, we've been messing with them since then. Like 2014, yes, again, that's where it escalated. But
well, and we learned in the 1950s, early 1950s, that Soviet Union wanted to become part of NATO, and actually talked and openly offered, and we said no. So imagine how different things would be, because we can't have two powerful leaders, right? That's the thing, right? We need to have a leader. We need to have one leader on the Western side, and then we need to have an enemy, right? That's how these things work in good storytelling. And that's exactly what we're doing now. So the impossible becomes inevitable when you, increase and provoke and get to this level of insanity by continuing to send a ton of weapons into this country. So, of course, NATO doesn't want peace at all. Now we have more confirmation of this. This weekend, in fact, we now know that the peace was almost ironed out. This is remarkable. Peace was almost ironed out between Putin and Zelensky until NATO got in the way of it. So this is the former Prime Minister of Israel. This is Naftali Bennett. This is his first interview that he's done since leaving office. He sat down on Saturday into this interview and said that NATO blocked his efforts at brokering peace between Ukraine and Russia. So here's how David DeCamp over at antiwar.com puts it in text. And he says, on March 4th, 2022, Bennett traveled to Russia to meet with President Putin. In the interview, he details his mediation at the time between Putin and Ukrainian President Zelensky, which he said he coordinated with the United States, France, Germany, and the UK. Bennett said that both sides agreed to major concessions during his mediation effort. But ultimately, the Western leaders opposed Bennett's efforts. He says, quote, I'll say this in the broad sense. I think there was a legitimate decision by the West to keep striking Putin and not negotiate, Bennett said. When asked if the Western powers blocked the mediation efforts, Bennett said, basically, yes, they blocked it. And I thought they were wrong. Admission from the Israeli Prime Minister, who was in the room where it happened. Caitlin Johnstone takes it one step further and says, she writes, in March of last year, Bloomberg's Niall Ferguson reported that sources in the U.S. and U.K. governments had told him the real goal of Western powers in this conflict is not to negotiate peace or end the war quickly, but to prolong it in order to bleed Putin and achieve regime change in Moscow. Ferguson wrote that he has reached the conclusion that the U.S. intends to keep this war going, and he says he has other sources to corroborate this. And remember, in September, Vladimir Putin gave a speech in which he addressed this. He addressed the fact that they were actively in Turkey having peace talks with Zelensky, and were getting very close to a conclusion, a peaceful solution, until someone got in the way. Listen.
And I want to say that publicly for the first time, after the start of the special military operation, also at the Istanbul negotiations, there was a very positive reaction to our proposals concerning ensuring the security of Russia. But it was obvious that the West was not happy with the peaceful decision. So after reaching certain compromises, they effectively were given a direct order to undermine the negotiations.
Don't you love the West? Don't you love NATO? Like here we literally have them at the table agreeing to a peaceful solution to this. Like we're going to take this portion of the Donbass, the area that you've been attacking for the last 8 years, and there's been a genocide there. We'd like you to stop killing innocent people. We're going to provide security and stability in that area. That's what our concession will be. And then we will leave you alone. And we will also make other concessions on our side. There were big concessions made by the Russian side. Sorry, we don't want that. We would rather have death and destruction. We would rather have the West continuing to provoke Russia because we see the decline of the US dollar. It's about power, the decline of the US dollar hegemony and power in the West. How do we hang on to power? We have to create regime change in Russia. Russia is becoming too self-sufficient. It's aligning itself too strongly with China, Saudi Arabia, and other nations. And it's a huge point of contention for the West. So another big story this afternoon, as if chemical weapons attacks and boots on the ground weren't enough for you, sources are reporting that Ukraine and NATO are about to carry out a false flag attack in the city of Kramatorsk. So here's the map of Kramatorsk, and this is stunning report. So this is a stunning bit of breaking news in Ukraine. This report comes to us from War on Fakes, and they're reporting that the Russian Federation's Interdepartmental Humanitarian Response Coordination Headquarters in Ukraine has issued an urgent statement from Russia. According to a number of sources, the Ukrainian security services are preparing to carry out a large-scale provocation in this city in the near future in order to accuse Russia of committing, quote, war crimes. For this purpose, the Kyiv regime plans to use controlled charges to blow up the buildings of the narcological and oncological dispensaries located on the 31st Alexei Street, as well as the First City Hospital on 17th Alexei Street. This is planned in order to accuse Russia of allegedly deliberately targeting civilian facilities. The staff of the medical facilities have already been evacuated, and the staff have been shifted to remote work. Imagine finding out like, hey, we'd rather you not come into work today because we're basically going to blow up the building and blame it on Russians. So probably don't want to show up to work today. Okay. All right. I'll stay home. I've got some work I can do from home. Just let us know when this is over. I can come back to work again. But this is my favorite part of the story. Journalists from Western media outlets, and I'm sure the Associated Press is right there, have already arrived in the city accompanied by the Security Service of Ukraine, the SBU. And they're staying at the Sapphire Hotel. So we know where they're staying. The bombing of medical facilities in Kramatorsk is planned to be presented in the West as yet another crime committed by Russian troops, demanding a response from the international community and an acceleration in the supply of new weapons in Kyiv. So the reason I love reporting on these false flag attacks is, I mean, even if sometimes we report on them and they end up happening anyway, like, you know, but at least getting the message out there about it can prevent them. Them from
and also
happening.
And debunk them, because remember when we covered the story, they were trying to convince us that all of these people were killed in this certain area, and then when the cars were driving by, there were dead people getting up after the car drove by. Remember, like, hands were moving, and like they've tried to do this several times, and so by us either covering it after the fact debunks it, or covering it before the attack stops it from spreading as a false, or showing that it is a false flag.
That's a great point, right? So it debunks it, and we can show you that this is what they do. They actively do this stuff. I mean, look, there's all kinds of propaganda in war. It's been the way it's been for, you know, hundreds and hundreds of years, right? But this is the worst we've ever seen. And it's unbelievable how complicit the Western media is in this. And you had that reporter standing there. He's like, and it was like he was like a sea of body bags behind him. And there's one, and the body bag wasn't completely over the body, and you see the person under the body bag pull it over himself, like actors. You know, like this is what, and then this is like broadcast on CNN. It's like, here I am with all of these bodies. Never mind that person who's just an actor, just covering himself up with the body bag.
That's just normal dead people behavior.
I'm not dead yet.
Right, I'm not dead yet. It's just normal dead people behavior. Bring out your dead. So, I mean, this is amazing. I would love to know which journalists are there. Just keep your eye out for some tweets from different journalists from like the Associated Press, the BBC, the normal players.
Well, one thing I can tell you, if it's anybody like a high level journalist, they're not going to put them in harm's way. So if like you're, what's the white haired Anderson Cooper, if it's people like that are there, we know they're in no danger.
No, of course, but they'll still have on their little army hat, their little army helmet.
Yeah,
like we're really. I'm a press. I'm in the press. Here I am in the comfort of my hotel in thousands of miles away from any kind of battlefront. So remarkable. We'll see what happens with this false flag attack. But again, medical facilities have been evacuated and journalists are flying in so they can be right there with their cameras and their video cameras ready to go. And this is desperation. I mean, this is what you're seeing, guys. This is desperation because NATO is trying to do whatever it can right now to try to curry favor with, with a national television audience. With, oh my God, yeah, we're so tired of Ukraine. We're tired of all the money we're pouring in there. But did you see what Russia just did to this hospital? All right, we got it. You know what? We've got to send boots on the ground. We've got to send additional tanks. We've got to put an end to Putin. And there's a lot of dumb people out there who will fall for that, because there's a lot of dumb people out there who just are tuned in to watch MSNBC or CNN or just watch corporate media. And they don't know any better. They really don't. So again, desperation. Now here's another piece of desperation. I told you there are a lot of pieces in Ukraine tonight, and I wanted to bring it to you because you're not going to see this in the mainstream media anywhere else. At least I don't think you will. A new video just released of Ukrainian soldiers talking openly about the true realities of the war. Friend of the show, Colonel Douglas McGregor, sent this to me earlier and said, you've got to see this, Clayton. You've got to see this hidden camera footage. And you can see, and now we've been hearing about these soldiers leaving the battlefield completely. They have no support, right? They're being openly decimated. They've been cannon fodder. And as Colonel McGregor puts it, it's like a meat grinder. The meat grinder is about to happen here, because they're just literally throwing people into the meat grinder at this point. And this is video example number 1 of this meat grinder. So this is soldiers admitting that the casualties are severe. They're in a room talking about how these new guys that are coming have no idea what's about to happen. He said that they're basically saying there's no army left to speak of anymore. So someone set up a camera in this room while they're talking, and that any of these guys that are being sent to the front lines will be killed immediately. Is basically what is being said here. So this is Ukrainian. I'm not going to translate it, but we'll have subtitles here on the screen for you to watch. Take a look.
Скільки просиділи, просто ми дому пошли, вышли оттуда живые, слава Богу, вышли. Много пацанов погибло, все. Нас обратно привозят в такую же жопу и обратно в мясо. А то, блядь, въебали трішечки і все, їбать, сядете нахуй. Я в реальной воде ни разу не был на позиции, ни разу не был. Человек вот вообще понятия не имеет, что это. Контролированный пиздец. Ты думаешь, я... Не, я вообще, я говорю за всех, то есть, мы коллектив, я говорю за всех.
Чому хлопці, трохи бунтують? Тому що, по-перше, дійсно, нас ніхто з хлопців не був.
Короче, я вам расскажу, чтобы вы мне не доказывали. Нету больше пехотных рот. Нету. Сука, нету. С моей роты 7-й осталось, блядь, 18 человек, нахуй. 18, блядь. С 8-й роты осталось 32 человека, блядь, на позиции, блядь. С 9-й 41, блядь.
Yeah, for some reason, I must have grabbed the wrong one, but I have the other one that has the full, I don't know what happened to the subtitles on there. But anyway, we'll make sure that's in there. We'll fix that in post with the proper subtitles. So just to sum it up, they're all kibitzing about how bad things are and how awful it is on the front lines. And the people that are coming in literally have no idea what they're about to get into. And at one point he said, there's no one left. He said, our entire company is destroyed. They're all gone. All the infantry is gone. They're just destroyed. There's nothing. He's like a one guy here. He's like, we got one guy here left. He's like, it's literally like nothing left. And they have no idea what they're about to experience when they're here.
I saw a video this weekend on Twitter of parents arguing with officials that were there trying now to recruit 15, 16, and 17-year-olds to go to the front line because they're running out of people.
Yeah, and 60 and 80-year-olds. I mean, like, whatever you've got left, just throw them into the meat grinder. It's unbelievable. And who's caught in all of it? It's the innocent people of Ukraine who are in this, who've had their lives upended because of this. And opportunity after opportunity to never let it get to this point. And you can blame NATO. You can blame the West. You can blame Boris Johnson torpedoing peace talks, all in an effort to shore up Western strength. So Putin has just issued... Go ahead.
I just want to say what really irritates me is that people, you have to have a bad guy, and Putin has been made the bad guy, but Putin has made every effort, and he's said this over and over again, and has shown how patient he has been, and he's made every effort to minimize casualties of all, even the military. Like he's taken prisoners and things rather than killing in a lot of cases, but they're continually giving him no choice. But to say that he's done anything, like he has gone out of his way to avoid any casualty as much as possible. And I think that is what elevates him in this situation, in my mind, because he's trying not to do this, but they're putting him in a situation that he has to do what he's doing.
Yeah, I don't know. I hear what you're saying, and I grew up the idea that like nothing ever good comes from war. Nothing, right?
Yeah.
And so
I agree.
But then you look at
but if you have, to me, it's like if you have the most warmongerous country in the world, which is the United States, right? We are warmongers. We love war. And if we would build, like if you had a person who was, just this military person that hated people and everything, and they built their house next to yours and put up a fence with barbed wire and would like aim a gun at your kids when they walked over there because they were too close to their property, you would probably do everything you could to get rid of them. And at some point, if they ever hurt your kid or ever made your kid feel like they're in danger, you would attack those people. And I look at it kind of like that. It's like the only thing he did not want was NATO or the United States at his next door to him.
Well, and we promised him that would be the case, that we wouldn't do that.
Right. And we've been promising that since World War II.
And so we incrementally get closer to that door. I just come back to the idea, like, that to me, nothing ever good comes from war, and there should always be a solution that's better. So, invading a country is not the solution that I would ever want. But, this is the solution that we have. This is the solution that's on the table right now. And at the end of the day, there was a genocide unfolding in the Donbass for 8 years, where tens of thousands of people were being killed, civilians, on a regular basis by Ukrainian shelling. And the West did nothing. They created it. They provoked it. They fomented it. And so what was the Russian side supposed to do? Ethnic Russians who were having their families slaughtered. It's like Bill Clinton's greatest regret, other than God knows what else, Monica Lewinsky or whatever, but his greatest regret of his presidency, he said, was acting too slowly in Rwanda. Right? So when a genocide is unfolding, like waiting too long. So 8 years, how much longer do you want to go? How much more evidence do you need of the slaughter that's continuing there? So last week, Putin just issued his most direct threat against these NATO weapons and involvement in Ukraine. I'll show you what he said in a moment. But first, last week, NATO made a big push to send a lot more weapons into Ukraine. The U.S. announced billions more, including Javelin missiles, more HIMARS weapons separately. And then Washington pledged to send 31 Abrams tanks, but they're not even expected to be delivered until the end of 2023 at the earliest. Germany also changed its stance on supplying modern armor to Kyiv, pledging to deliver 14 Leopard tanks, as well as allowing European countries to re-export German-made vehicles from their own inventories. And Portugal getting in on the action as well. I'll have more to say about Portugal in just a moment, but the number of Leopard tanks expected to be funneled to Ukraine amounts to some 112 vehicles. And so Putin this weekend, at the 80th anniversary of the Battle of Stalingrad, I think it was 80th. Yeah, he was there and he was talking about Stalingrad. He was talking about I can't believe we're literally talking about this again. Again, we have German Leopard tanks coming to attack us. Like, he's like, didn't we go through this in a world war before? We really have to go through this again? But in this speech, he issues his sternest and strongest warnings yet to NATO about what will come if they continue to provoke. Watch.
Невероятно, но факт. Нам снова угрожают немецкими танками «Леопард», на борту которых кресты. И вновь собираются воевать с Россией на земле Украины руками последующей Гитлера, руками бандеровцев. Мы свои танки к их границам не посылаем. Но у нас есть чем ответить. И применением бронетехники дело не закончится. Все должны это понимать. Для тех, кто угрожает нам, видимо, для них непонятна простая истина. Весь наш народ, все мы росли и с молоком матери впитали в себя традиции нашего народа. Поколение победителей, которые своим трудом, потом и кровью создали нашу страну и передали ее нам в наследство. Стойкость защитников Сталинграда для российского воинства, для всех нас важнейший морально-нравственный ориентир. И наши солдаты и офицеры верны.
So it won't just be with armor. Like, get ready. So you want to keep doing this. It's going to be a wake-up call sooner rather than later. We'll have more to say on Portugal in just a second. We're also going to look at we're going to look at the very latest in Haiti in just a moment as well. We've got an unbelievable story about FTX, and we're going to talk about this balloon craziness because there's so many pieces on this story that I want to discuss. We've got more on that. Please subscribe to the channel. I hope you're subscribed. We are here live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, covering the stories the mainstream media largely ignores. So thank you for all of your support. Thank you to the tens of thousands of you. I think we just hit 300 million views, right? Like, was it 300?
Yep.
300 million.
300
million. Take that, CNN. 300 million views. So thank you for all of your views. Thank you for sharing the show. And well, I love when I get to run into you guys, like going to an airport or just out, and you guys come up and say you're big fans of Redacted. So thank you so much. Much love to all of you. We've got more news to get to. But first, I'm going to tell you about our friends over at Medcline. So I have had really bad like neck and shoulder pain for like the last year. And in the fall, Medcline said, hey, Clayton, we want to send you one of our special sleep systems, the component shoulder relief sleep system. And I said, okay, I've tried everything. Let's see if this actually works. Okay. And I'm going to tell you, it's been an absolute game changer for Natalie and I. So you basically sleep on this almost like an elevated wedge. And it's, it's not medication, it's not surgery, it's the Medcline sleep system. It's like two systems that provide relief for like acid reflux, if you got that, or shoulder pain. You basically lay it on your bed and you sleep on your side and you put your arm through this one thing and it supports, it's fantastic. And it takes all of the pressure off of your shoulder. And it's really great. I mean, it's supremely comfortable. And you get in this like little like pod, you're almost like wrapped up, and it's just like, it's the most comfortable thing in the world. I'm going to tell you, within 24 hours, like after I woke up the next day, I said, I cannot believe it. The shoulder pain is gone. I'm like, this was a game changer. David, you ordered one, didn't you?
Yeah. Yeah. And I got to say, so I created basically a hybrid version for myself because I have this really soft feather pillow that I love, but I still take the Medcline and then I put my arm down in it and then I take my feather pillow and I put that next to me, and I've slept like straight through I used to get up so many times in the middle of the night, but I will sleep straight through now because that shoulder, just like that relief on that shoulder is just amazing.
Yeah, my sister got one. All of our family got one for like Christmas. They all bought one. Then they all gave it as gifts. And so I'm telling you what, if you suffer from this, give it a shot. You get 20% off right now. You can get 20% off just trying it. Medcline has been validated in 7 independent clinical trials as the most effective natural treatment for heartburn, regurgitation, many painful symptoms of GERD, all while you sleep. They're not simple foam wedges. They are true medical devices. They are FDA-registered devices, by the way. Doctor-recommended, clinically proven to provide relief. The patented arm pocket allows for comfortable side sleeping the entire night. You're enveloped in side sleeping comfort. 93% of patients reported a reduction in nighttime heartburn with the reflux relief system and an overall improvement in sleep quality. So I'm going to tell you right now, just try it. Get 20% off now when you go to medcline.com/redacted. That's MEDCLIN, like incline, medcline.com/redacted. Get 20% off and a better night's sleep today. medcline.com/redacted. Well, for months now, we here at Redacted have been reporting that an invasion of Haiti is coming. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when it was going to happen. And, well, over the weekend, the invasion appears to be inching closer. Canada, which has been coordinating its moves with the Biden administration, deployed military aircraft over Haiti this weekend. It released a statement even saying this is all to disrupt, quote, the activities of gangs. They put that in their press release. Joining me now to discuss this is Redacted correspondent Dan Cohen, who's one of the few journalists to report from Haiti and not too long ago just returned from Port-au-Prince, Haiti. Dan, welcome to the show. What do you make of, first of all, what do you make of this press release and the timing of this?
Well, it's really interesting to see that Canada made this move in a very public way, because up until this point, it's been very quiet, hush-hush behind the scenes. When the Biden administration, including Blinken, Biden himself, and National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan went to Mexico last month to meet with their Canadian and Mexican counterparts, Haiti was, of course, on the agenda. And when Sullivan was asked about what's happening with this, Haiti intervention, he was pretty mum. I quote, he said, "What I don't want to do is jam anybody, so I want them to be able to have the conversation." So he really didn't want to talk about it. Now, that is in total contrast to now this very public announcement from the Canadian Foreign Ministry, and that was pushed out through all of the mainstream media channels. So I think what this is about is really testing the water, is probing to see what the reaction is. The plane that the Canadians deployed is called a C-140 Aurora. So it's a long-range patrol aircraft that is used for various types of missions, over land, over water. According to the Canadian Foreign Ministry's release, they say that it is used not only for gathering intelligence and surveillance, but actually has strike capabilities. So this is obviously, I would say, a threat, if not a thinly veiled threat against Haiti. And the person that this is against is Jimmy Barbecue Cherizier. This is the figure that the U.S. Desperately wants to either arrest, imprison, assassinate one way or the other, to get rid of and smash into a million pieces the armed movement, the revolutionary forces of the G9 family and allies that he leads, which represents a threat to kind of the U.S.-led order in Haiti. So I spoke to Jimmy Barbecue Cherizier late Sunday night and got his reaction to this Canadian warplane. Let's take a listen to what he said.
Premièrement, moi-même en tant que président et porte-parole force révolutionnaire Genève en famille et alliés moyen tout patriote, moun qui aime pays, nous contre toute intervention n'importe qui pays l'Italie, nous contre toute intervention militaire contre peuple haïtien. Je dis à prétexte on apprend pour dire que pays a gang pour envahir pays. Nous-mêmes, nous conscients que le pays a un paquet de gangs violents qui a terrorisé la population. Ils ont fait cas déjà sur le monde, ils ont kidnappé le monde et ils ont tué le monde sans raison. C'est les politiciens et les oligarques qui mettent dans le pays.
So, Cherizier's point is that the talk about gangs is really a pretext for military intervention, military invasion against Haiti, against the Haitian people, against the Haitian masses. And curiously, over the last week or so, after months of the mainstream media wanting nothing to do, not approaching Cherizier, they published 3 interviews. The AP, Al Jazeera, and Sky News all published interviews. They approached Cherizier for interviews, and he granted them. And he is the only so-called gang leader who does that. And they called him a gang leader. And in all of the headlines, he's a gang leader. He's a gang leader.
For our audience that doesn't know, I mean, we've been trying to educate our audience on this story for the last number of months. The media has totally ignored this story. We were the only news organization covering this story. And when it's really remarkable that suddenly now 3 news organizations within a week, almost as if it's coordinated, suddenly decide to descend on Haiti to do interviews, and they specifically go after Jimmy Cherizier, and they paint him as a gang leader, as a pretext. And that's the way I see it as well, is that it's a pretext for an invasion, painting him as the bad guy. We need to go there and provide peacekeepers and really make sure everyone's okay, and we're going to be there to take care of this guy. Who is Jimmy Cherizier? Is he a gang leader, or is he a representative of the Haitian people?
Well, I mean, yeah, exactly. This is manufacturing consent in action is what we're seeing. You're right, Clayton. Jimmy Cherizier is a former cop who basically got burned by the system after being kind of a straight shooter, straight arrow for a lot of years and trying to do his best within the system. They burned him. They basically needed a sacrificial lamb. And this is what we show in the documentary Another Vision Inside Haiti's Uprising, which gives the background to the current moment, which I made with Haiti Liberté. And Jimmy Cherizier formed this federation of armed groups called the G9 that is totally opposed to criminal activity, to kidnapping, to extortion of businesses and merchants, to rape, which, sadly, these things are very common. And there are a lot of real gangs, what you could call gangs, criminal armed groups. And these are the groups that are against Jimmy Cherizier and the G9. I mean, I could list off a whole bunch of them. There's Vitellom Innocent, who just killed several cops in Haiti just in the past couple weeks. There is Izo in the leader of the 5 Seconds gang in Village des Dieux, who is a regular kidnapper. There's the 400 Mauzo, who kidnapped 17 North American missionaries in 2021. None of them are under sanctions, yet Jimmy Barbecue, and none of them ever are approached for interviews because they are real gang leaders.
And of course, and the Western media and Canada, the United Nations, the United States aren't interested in those people, the actual gangs. They're interested in the ones that are representing the people who would want to push Western influence out of Haiti, right? Isn't that funny how that works?
Exactly. They never approach those guys for interview, for a nice sit-down interview, because you can't. It's too dangerous. They'll kidnap you. They'll, demand millions of dollars from your family or whatever. That's why none of these correspondents go to meet and sit down with any of these real gangsters who are hardened criminals. They only go to Cherizier, who continues to say, yeah, I'll sit down with you and I'll show you the neighborhood I live in. I'll show you the slums of Port-au-Prince, and you can see the crushing poverty, and you can communicate that to your audience because, we want the international community to treat Haiti as a normal country and not treat it as a piggy bank, as a place to just exploit and take wealth from. But no, he's called a gang leader, and that's all about manufacturing consent for this imminent invasion. I think basically the United States is in a difficult spot with Haiti because it knows that it doesn't, if it goes into Haiti or Canada with a full force and just invades, it's going to spark an uprising. The Haitian masses, Haitian people do not want foreign intervention. They will wholly reject it, and that will rally people around Jimmy Cherizier, which is the last thing that the U.S. wants to do. So it's in this tight spot of, well, on one hand, we want to take this guy out, but we have to do it with a very soft touch. So all this negotiation behind the scenes and deploying this warplane is all about figuring out how they're going to do it and how they're going to basically get an element inside the Haitian National Police, which is an anemic force, to be able to carry out this hit. So there have been a number of trainings going on, and the U.S. Has been seeking to train like a SWAT team, a so-called anti-gang SWAT team inside the Haitian National Police, and that was pushed very hard by the former U.S. Special Envoy to Haiti, Dan Foote, who I interviewed in September, and he told me that this is all happening. So
just to be clear,
it's a matter of time.
Literally, like assassination training camp right now that the United States is preparing in order to take out Jimmy Cherizier. Like, this is
exactly
unbelievable. And I guess I should ask you, what is the agenda? What is the hope from the United States and Canada in all of this? What do they hope to accomplish in Haiti? Is it to continue to just pillage all of their natural resources and keep them in total poverty?
Exactly. I mean, when you go to Haiti, when you go to the slums, you go to Cité Soleil, and other ones. I mean, the conditions are unreal. So there are a few aspects to it. You have the sweatshops where foreign corporations make enormous amounts of money. You have the sort of geopolitical consideration that they don't want Haiti, which has always served as an example of freedom for the world, which is the only successful slave revolution and took part in freedom movements throughout the Western Hemisphere. And you also have, one aspect that doesn't get talked about is the biopharma industry that loves to use Haiti to test its products. To basically go into these slums and say, oh, there's sewage everywhere, and people are getting cholera and this disease and that disease. And instead of actually fixing the conditions, which frankly would not be very difficult, they say, we're going to test drugs on you. So that's another aspect of it. So they just want to keep the status quo of poverty and exploitation in Haiti. That's the whole game.
Well, we will continue to follow the story and hold their feet to the fire covering this story. It's incredibly important. I just find the timing don't you find it so interesting that these three news organizations, the Associated Press, Sky News, and who was the other one? All with
AP, Al Jazeera, and Sky News. Yeah,
all at the same time. It's like they're handed something from the deep state. It's like they're handed something from the intelligence community. Here's a story. You might want to go and cover this. We actually encourage you to go and cover this. And they all fall in line. Almost within a day, they're down there covering this story, seeking an interview with him. It's crazy.
And all the same headline saying this is gang leader, the most feared gang leader. So it's so predictable. It's like trite. I want to challenge those guys. Why don't you go to Izo? Why don't you go to Tilapli? Why don't you go to any of the real criminal gangsters and walk into their neighborhood? The AP went and Cherizier declined their request at first. And you know what they did? They just showed up at his neighborhood uninvited, and Cherizier was graceful about it. He said, "Okay, I'll do the interview with you. Go to Village des Deux. Go to where go to other neighborhoods that are not gonna, the leader is not gonna guarantee your safety, where you're likely to get kidnapped and maybe killed, and see what happens." So it's just shameful.
Yeah, it absolutely is. Well, we will continue to cover this story and hopefully bring light and shed light on it. And hopefully Americans who are watching this story can share it and realize that there is another side to this story, not the one they're being fed by the mainstream media. Dan Cohen, and by the way, I should mention, Dan is a new member of the Redacted team officially. Our Washington correspondent from Washington, D.C. He's done a great job for us over the past year, and we brought him on officially to join the Redacted team. So welcome aboard, Dan, and thank you so much for your great work. We're thrilled to have you.
I couldn't ask for a better team, and I appreciate all the support and the freedom that I've been given since the beginning of our collaboration. And I'm excited to grow with Redacted and see what we can do.
Well, wonderful. Well, we're thrilled to have you here so much. Thank you so much, Dan. We'll talk to you real soon. Thanks again.
Thanks, Clayton.
Thanks, Dan. Really appreciate that. Guys, please.
Such a cool dude.
He really is, and a great reporter, and we're thrilled to have him here on the team as part of Redacted. Like, we want to, this is independent journalism. We are supported by you guys. We're supported by the sponsors we have on this show. We are not funded by billionaires. We're not funded by deep state people. So, we're able to do this on a daily basis with your support. So just even if you can't support the show with, I don't know, by going to our Redacted store, even if you can't do that, just smash the like button or just share the show. Just text it to a friend who might be interested in real news. We just follow
and also just
facts.
I want to say again, we cut them up into clips every day. So, if you don't want to share the whole hour, 2-hour live stream, watch for the clips that come afterwards. We take each segment and make it its own thing. And we're also putting out shorts. So watch for the shorts as well, because those are really bite-sized chunk things you can get to introduce people to us, and then,
right,
for more. So
little bite size, like an appetizer.
Yeah, my younger brother James, he says that he watches those shorts every day because they're really easy while he's eating lunch at work. So he watches all of our shorts during his lunchtime at work.
That's great.
And he's in Detroit.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for doing that. And thanks to all of you for subscribing. We've got more news to get to here on the show. We are going to talk about the very latest in Portugal and why in the world they're sending Leopard tanks to Ukraine. Have they lost their minds? We'll talk about that. I have some interesting perspective on Portugal and the Portuguese people, who are a peaceful country now. They didn't start out that way, but they are now. But maybe not for very much longer. Also, FTX, Sam Bankman-Fried. What in the world's going on there? Well, a lot of Democrats are freaking out right now this afternoon, because we just got some interesting information over the past couple of days, couple of hours actually, about what Democrats are going to be expected to do to pay back all of that dirty money that they got from Sam Bankman-Fried. And they have 22 days left on which to do it, or we're going to start naming names. We'll go into that story. Plus, we'll talk about the crazy balloon story in just a moment. But first, I do want to mention we do have a new Redacted store, and it was built on Shopify. So we built our whole new Redacted store using Shopify. And what I love about it is it's just was so easy to set up. So you can, if you want to set up your own store, it doesn't really matter what you're selling. Digital goods, t-shirts, hats, it doesn't matter. You can go to shopify.com/redacted and you can launch your own business. You can be up and running in no time. Maybe you're selling salt. Maybe you've got Himalayan salt that you sell, or maybe you make some kind of a craft. It doesn't matter. Maybe you're a fine artist and you make fine art prints that you want to sell. Great, do it. Sell it there. In fact, I just ordered something from somebody else's Shopify website the other day, and I got it in time for a birthday gift, and it was gorgeous, and it was from their website, but it was from Shopify website that they had, and it was super simple to check out and ship and everything else. It was great.
A lot of people don't realize how many connections, you can connect it to your Etsy store. We've connected it to our YouTube channel. you can connect it to so many things. It has, since it's so widely used, they have so many connections. So it doesn't matter where you're selling. You can consolidate it down to one store, and it just makes it easy because you just tell people to go to one place.
Yeah, and they have got great customer support too, 24/7 customer support, and Shopify is there to support you. But they have anything. They have a course library too. So if you want to learn how to be a business person, they've got a whole course library to walk you through that customer support level to teach you every step of the way. Really, really great. So that again, our store is on Shopify. You can check it out later if you'd like. But first, right now, we want you to check out for $1 per month trial. You can try it to see if you wanted to launch your own business. You can do it. $1 per month is all you need. If you go to shopify.com/redacted, all lowercase, go to shopify.com/redacted, take your business to the next level today, just for $1. Shopify.com/redacted. And we thank them for their support of Redacted and independent journalism. Shopify has been supporters of independent journalism here on this show now for over a year now. So our much love to you guys. You guys are true patriots supporting what we do here. So thank you. Thank you for that. All right, let's talk about Portugal now. We have to talk about Portugal. Suddenly taking a more active role in the war on Ukraine. By the way, I think the Portuguese flag is one of the most beautiful flags, by the way. And I love Portugal. And they're taking now a more active role in Ukraine in World War III. I'm going to stop calling it the war in Ukraine. I'm going to call it World War III because that's exactly what it is. Portugal famously stayed out of World War II. A neutral country, by the way. And look how beautiful this country was. And it is. They also fought hard to stay out of NATO. Most people don't realize that. They did not want to become a part of NATO. But the US and the UK threatened Portugal, so that they were more or less forced to join NATO. Now, look, we all have free will. They could have, at the end of the day, said, no, we're not under any circumstances joining NATO. But they did, but they were forced because of these bigger powers breathing down their neck and forcing them into these things. It's a country of 11 million people, so it's not a very big country. It's about the size geographically of like a little bit bigger than New Jersey. Now Portugal is being forced once again to kiss the feet of the West, to kiss the feet of the United States and their NATO commitment by sending tanks to Ukraine. It kind of reminds me almost of like gang membership. You know, like, oh, you want to be a part of this gang? Fine, prove it to us. Like in Goodfellas. Oh yeah, you want to be a part of the gangsters? You want to be a part of NATO, the warmongers of the world? Yeah, prove it to us. Go find some stuff that you can send to Ukraine. Go to your war closet, and what kind of weapons can you show the world that you're just not an innocent neutral bystander anymore? And Portugal this weekend now announcing, yes, we will kiss your ring. We will kiss your ring, United States. We will kiss your ring, UK. And Portugal announcing they will send those Leopard tanks to Ukraine. This is Antonio Costa, the prime minister, making the announcement. I think it's just the biggest bonehead move. Really, really stupid. So Portugal is going to send 2 Leopard tanks to Ukraine. 2. So why not send none? Because the 2 that you're sending are from the 1970s and they don't even work. Like literally we had to pull up archive footage of, this is 1970s footage of the Leopard tanks. Look at this. These are the Leopard tanks.
We have 1,000 people starving over in this town over here. It's like, here's 2 beans.
Right. What am I going to do with this? It's more work. And as Scott Ritter has pointed out on our show before, it actually makes Ukraine weaker when we send them this shit. Here's a bunch of old stuff that you now need to go out and try to figure out how to repair. So no, here at Costa added that Portugal is in talks with Germany to obtain parts needed for the repair of a number of inoperable Leopard tanks in Portugal's inventory. So now Portugal, come on, really? Portugal was a warmongering country, one of the first, really. One of the oldest and first. And the stuff that Portugal did in its history is stuff you can't even tell your kids about. It's so awful. Read books about it. It's awful, awful stuff that Portugal did. But
now, are people protesting it over there? Just out of curiosity, are they?
No. Good luck finding anti-NATO protests. It's very difficult to find. It's difficult to find. But there's a lot of people here. There's a lot of people in Portugal who are really resentful of what's been happening. But, if you want to kiss the hand of NATO, you do it. You're going to dig out some old tanks and you're going to do it. See, again, Portugal was a warmongering country many, many years ago. Then they learned their lesson. And they said, you know what? No, we don't want to do that anymore. That's not worth it. And so then they became neutral. And in World War II, they were neutral. And they have remained so in large part. And they can sort of sit back and while all these other countries want to go warmongering, they can say, no, we did that for hundreds of years of our history. And it didn't get us very far. And so we're going to sit this one out. So you want to be the biggest and strongest country in the world, United States, and bomb everyone and colonize everyone, make everyone hate you so they attack you? We've been there, done that. Bye. So they're in talks with Germany to obtain parts needed for the repair of a number of these inoperable Leopard tanks. In some ways, I can't wrap my head around this. It's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. You're literally going through your old closet and taking out a bunch of crap that does not work, and it's like you're sending it off because you don't want to deal with fixing it.
And they're like going to think that Germany just has a closet full of parts for their tanks.
Well, yeah, I was just going to say, they're not. Nobody's still manufacturing parts for it. So it's like the parts they're going to get, who's going to repair those? Somebody's going to have to repair the parts to send them to repair the tanks to get them to Ukraine.
Right.
Both of them.
And again, both of them. So why not send nothing? It's not going to do anything. An old, busted up tank from the 1970s? You don't think Russia has that number on it? Probably will use it as just target practice for fun. The moment it gets there, it'll be molten. It'll be burned, destroyed.
They're like, just hit the manifold. They can't remake that. Like, they only got to hit one part of it. They're like, they can't find that in Germany or Portugal, so just hit that part. And
it's like the whack-a-mole thing. You just get hit the one part and boom, and the thing just pops apart like an old tin can. So Costa says, yeah, we're going to get these inventories out. He says, we are currently working to be able to dispense some of our tanks. I kind of like that comment. He's kind of like, man, we got a bunch of old crap. It's taking up space. And maybe if this is like the silver lining here, where it's like Portugal's saying, okay, we tried. We don't want to have any tanks in our arsenal at all anymore. We're done. Like, we're done with any kind of warring. We're Portugal. We're a beautiful country. We've got lovely people. It's sunny all the time. We've got amazing food. We eat sardines in the spring. It's delicious. We don't want to have any tanks. We don't want to have any war.
Somebody in chat said the older stuff is better, Clayton, and the parts are easier to fix, knuckleheads. But if they're that easy to fix, why are they asking Germany for it? Why aren't they fixing it themselves if it's that easy?
So you mean to tell me a tank built in the 1970s without any of the advanced electronics is actually better than these current tanks? And no, they're not. In fact, the top of the line Leopards, in fact, they're now having to, as Colonel McGregor talked about with me last week, they're having to take apart these tanks. So they're not sending the best tanks to Ukraine because they don't want the best tanks to fall in the hands of Russians. Think about that. So they'd rather send them crap that will not really work. So they're not sending the highest grade armor, the highest grade armor Leopard tanks to Ukraine with all of the highest tech refinements that the German army has.
You know what? That's think about that. They're not sending the best tanks or anything. They're not sending the best soldiers. They're trying to send citizens that have no idea how to fight. It's like, you're not sending your elite. You're not sending your good stuff. So what are you doing? You have no desire to, like, if you're going to win, quote unquote, what you're doing, then wouldn't you put in the best of the best in every front?
Yeah, you'd think. No, this is why I don't get it. You're cleaning out your closet. So here's a way to get rid of this crap. Let's just clean it out. And maybe, Portugal has made some sort of agreement with NATO. Like, if we clean out some of these old tanks, you'll supply us with new ones. Who knows, But again, at the end of the day, what you're doing is you're signaling that, no, we're interested in really drawing a line in the sand and showing Russia that we are an enemy of Russia. And that us being a neutral country, which we've prided ourselves on for many, many decades, being a neutral country. No, now we're actively taking a stand to fight alongside warmongers in Ukraine, to foment World War III. Really, really disappointing. Really disappointing. And a stupid move. And by the way, don't you think, so they've announced publicly where these tanks are going to be shipped from. They're going to put them on rail lines, and they've told the world we're shipping them on rail through Spain into Ukraine.
But it totally makes sense to me, because it falls right in line with their narrative. Put the weakest people out front so we can show a bunch of images of bodies that Russia has done. Let them know where the tanks are going to be so they can blow them up, and we can put that on the news and say, hey, they destroyed these tanks. Hey, they did this. Hey, they did that. Not the expensive ones. The cheap ones we're getting from these other countries.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the thing is, though, if they can, as like from a NATO perspective, they could put GPS maps on exactly where these tanks are as they travel through Europe and send them to Russia. Because if Russia attacks them on the way, that automatically triggers all of NATO, and NATO wants that.
Yeah,
so
and that's exactly
they'd
what.
Be happy for Russia to shoot those tanks.
And Scott Ritter pointed out they're never going to do that. They'll wait till they get to the battlefield, and then they'll just take them out. They'll just take them out, and they'll be done. And all of that wasted effort, right? I mean, you literally have a country right now that, Portugal's not the richest country in the world, not by a long shot. And so wouldn't you be better served mobilizing the amount of money it's going to take for you to put 2 tanks on rail lines and guard them through Spain and get them into Ukraine? Like, you know what? Fix up some of these dilapidated buildings. Do that. Fix up some of the streets and potholes and other things being uprooted by roots and trees, or you have like cars that go over bumps like this because they don't have the streets fixed. Fix that stuff. How about that? There's an idea. Instead of sending tanks to Ukraine. So Scott Ritter was on the show. He talked about Portugal and these tanks. Here's what former UN weapons inspector Scott Ritter had this to say. Watch.
They're going to hit NATO. They're going to hit London. They're going to hit Berlin. They're going to hit Paris. They're going to hit Brussels. They're going to hit Madrid. They're going to hit Lisbon. Hey, Portugal, good job. You just made yourself a nuclear target.
Yeah. So why do it with this stupid move with 2 broken down Leopard tanks from the 1970s? Stay out of it. Stay out of it. Really disappointing. And the people of Portugal, the kindest people in the world, the nicest people, they don't need this. And the leaders are doing the stupidest moves right now just to kiss the hands of NATO. And that's all this is. This is NATO bullying. This is NATO basically saying, hey, Portugal, show us what you got. You still want to be in NATO? Show us what you got.
Well, and there has to be some kind of return monetary or something there has to be something getting back, because it's like, look at the countries that were staying out. They weren't getting involved as much as they are now. And all of a sudden it's tanks and weapons and it's like world news. So it's like something happened to where they're like, hey, we're doing this. You want to stay in NATO or you want to continue to get these bribes or whatever they're getting. You have to do this.
They get money, of course. Yeah. And, they build a base in the Azores on the islands. So NATO has their bases there, of course, and they're getting money, of course, for that. And they didn't want it. They fought against it, and they didn't want it.
Yeah, and it just creates this illusion of world support. Like we all support Ukraine from the world, but Yeah,
it's kind of crazy. Well, hey guys, let's move over to Rumble. Hang out for our last story tonight. Let's kibitz a little bit on Rumble. You can go to rumble.com/redacted. They are a censorship-free platform. I've been seeing a ton of censorship over the past couple of weeks on YouTube for a lot of different stories. It is amazing to watch. Like last week we covered here on the show a story that they suppressed. It's amazing to watch YouTube. And we can see it, like our team, we can watch it happening in real time. So YouTube was not happy that we covered that Mr. Rogers story last week. Just go look at that story on our channel. Now, we uploaded a couple of different versions of it to test out, to see, and they suppressed it each time. It's amazing. It really is amazing. So we're going to go over to Rumble now, where it's a censorship-free platform. Please come on over and subscribe to us on Rumble. Rumble.com/redacted is the place to come. The stream will continue live there right now. So come on over to Rumble. Thank you so much, YouTube. Much love to all of you guys, though. I do appreciate all of the people. We have over 33,000 of you watching tonight on YouTube. So thank you very much. It's a huge platform. It gives us a huge reach, but it does have its censorship limitations. So come over to our Rumble channel. Again, redacted.com/rumble or rumble.com/redacted. Sorry, I got them